Millionaire freezes as Waitress draws the same picture his missing daughter used to draw. In a quiet corner of a luxurious Boston restaurant, Millionaire, Christopher Hamilton found his world turned upside down. He had ventured out for a late dinner, hoping to escape the haunting memory of his missing daughter Lily, who had vanished without a trace years ago. But when an unassuming waitress named Emily Reyes approached, everything changed. In a simple gesture, jotting a childlike sketch on the back of a receipt, she unknowingly resurrected Christopher's darkest fears and brightest hopes. It was the very same picture Lily used to draw as a little girl. With trembling hands and a pounding heart, Christopher realized his life would never be the same. Christopher Hamilton's world had once been an uncomplicated puzzle of hard work, strategic partnerships, and unstoppable ambition. Born in a modest neighborhood in Boston, he possessed a singular drive that propelled him to success by his late 20s. Through a series of shrewd technology investments, Christopher created a small empire. By 35, he was a millionaire revered in local business circles and recognized for his philanthropic deeds throughout Massachusetts. But beneath the surface of wealth and influence lay a heart weighed down by regret and anguish. His daughter Lily had been missing for 5 years. It happened on a crisp autumn day, one that had started like any other. Lily was 8 years old at the time, bounding out of her bedroom with pigtails, bouncing excited for her ballet class. Christopher remembered feeling relieved that morning. His busy schedule had finally allowed him a few days off, and he was eager to spend some time with Lily. He promised to watch her dance that afternoon, but Lily never made it to the studio. Halfway along her usual route, she disappeared. At first, the authorities treated it as a standard missing child case. They checked local parks, scoured the streets, interviewed neighbors. Christopher's fortunes meant that extra resources were brought in early, including private detectives. Yet no matter how many hours or how much money he poured into the search, Lily was nowhere to be found. Anonymous tip sightings in different states, even across the Canadian border, were all dead ends. His ex-wife, Marjorie, had already left town months before Lily's disappearance. Their marriage was as turbulent as it was short-lived, filled with arguments and mistrust. After Lily vanished, Marjorie blamed Christopher, though she had long since relinquished custody. She believed his high-profile lifestyle exposed Lily to danger. The ensuing investigation and media circus only deepened Christopher's guilt. He had spent every second in those first few years convincing himself that Lily would be found. Clinging to that fragile hope, he funded charitable programs for missing children. If he couldn't rescue Lily directly, he thought perhaps he could help someone else's child. Those efforts led him to cross paths with various philanthropic partners and private investigators. One name stood out: Jonathan Kendrick, a private detective who specialized in cold cases. Kendrick had been a police officer for a decade, eventually turning in his badge to pursue detective work on his own terms. He had a knack for sniffing out leads when everyone else had given up. Christopher enlisted Kendrick a year into Lily's disappearance, and though Kendrick's initial work yielded no breakthrough, he refused to close the case. Over time, Christopher learned to bury his anguish beneath the routines of daily life. He'd wake at dawn, exercise in his home gym, then spend hours in his home office corresponding with high-level partners around the world. When evening arrived, he'd either host lavish events for charity or bury himself in new investment strategies. Still, the photograph of Lily taken on her last birthday hung in every room of his mansion. If you observed closely enough, you might glimpse a subtle emptiness in his eyes whenever he paused to glance at those photographs. He couldn't forget the colorful drawings Lily used to create, especially on recurring picture, a son with a face wearing a little hat shining over a single daisy. Lily loved daisies, and Christopher's garden was full of them. She'd pick them, press them between the pages of her favorite storybook, and give them away like little tokens of love. That whimsical sun with the daisy beneath it had become her signature doodle, scrawled on greeting cards, plastered in the margins of her notebooks and pinned onto the family fridge. Now, 5 years later, Christopher was still haunted by the memory. He couldn't bring himself to move on. He never expected that one quiet evening would change the course of his life once again. Despite his reluctance to dine in public alone, he decided on a whim to visit Delfina's, an upscale restaurant on the outskirts of Boston. There he assumed he'd find a moment's peace. Their fate had other plans. Emily Reyes had only been working at Delfina's for a month ever since she arrived in Boston looking for new beginnings. She was 23 originally from a small town in Maine. With bright eyes and an easy smile, Emily exuded warmth that patrons loved, often leaving hefty tips in appreciation. Yet she harbored her own secrets. She rarely spoke about her family or her past, and she spent her off hours in the local public library poring over old newspapers for reasons she kept to herself. On that fateful night, Emily's shift was quiet, filled with the usual bustle couples on romantic dates, business people unwinding after stressful meetings, and the occasional solo diner lost in thought. Around 9 o'clock, Christopher Hamilton entered. He was a local celebrity of sorts, known for his philanthropic work and high-profile business successes. He moved with a refined confidence, yet there was a somber quality to him, as though his shoulders carried an invisible weight. Emily approached his table hesitantly, aware of his status, but treating him as she would any other guest. She took his order, a glass of Merlot and the salmon special, before disappearing into the kitchen. When she returned with the wine, Christopher had barely lifted his head. "Thank you," he murmured, eyes distant. Emily offered a warm smile. "Let me know if you need anything else." Over the next hour, as Christopher dined in silence, Emily couldn't help but notice the sadness in his gaze. Between greeting other patrons, she found herself glancing toward his table, studying the man who seemed enveloped in sorrow. There were rumors among the staff about Christopher Hamilton's tragic past. Everyone had heard that his young daughter went missing years ago and was never found. Near the end of Christopher's meal, Emily went to clear the plates. She carried them back into the kitchen, then returned with the check, but something possessed her to do a small, kind gesture. She had a habit of leaving little doodles for certain customers, especially those who looked like they could use a cheerful pick-me-up. Usually it was a cartoon cat or a smiley face, but this time she felt compelled to draw a small sun with a face wearing a funny hat, shining over a daisy, an image she remembered from, somewhere. She paused, pen hovering over the receipt as her brow creased in concentration. Where had she seen this image before? She wasn't sure. It felt oddly comforting. Shrugging off the confusion, she handed the receipt to Christopher, with the doodle at the bottom, accompanied by a short note, "Thank you for visiting Delfina's. Have a wonderful evening." Christopher glanced at the check, eyes briefly skimming the total. Then he saw the sketch. His expression froze in an instant. Emily watched as the color drained from his face. A wave of shock seemed to ripple through his entire being. He blinked rapidly, swallowing hard. His hand trembled as he picked up the receipt. "Where did you—" He tried to speak, but his voice faltered. He looked up, meeting Emily's concerned gaze. "Where did you learn this image?" Emily's heart pounded. She noticed he was gripping the slip of paper so tightly his knuckles turned white. Nervously, she tried to answer, but no coherent explanation formed in her mind. I don't know," she stammered. "It just came to me. I do these doodles sometimes when I'm sorry. Is something wrong?" Christopher looked from the paper back to Emily's face, trying to make sense of it all. This was the same sun and daisy drawing Lily had adored. Identical in every detail, the cheerful expression on the sun, the whimsical tilt of its hat, the single daisy petals, slightly uneven at the edges. It was like a carbon copy of Lily's signature doodle. Christopher's mind raced. Could it be pure coincidence? Or was it a sign? A clue that Lily was somehow alive and out there? Emily felt her cheeks flush as she grew more uneasy under his intense scrutiny. "Sir?" she prompted. Christopher inhaled shakily, forcing himself to regain composure. "I'm sorry. This is something very personal. My daughter used to draw this exact picture. She went missing years ago. This can't be a coincidence." Emily's eyes widened. She set down the tray she was holding, ignoring the curious stares of nearby customers. "Your daughter? I'm sorry, I had no idea." Christopher pressed a hand to his forehead, feeling a surge of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. "No, it's not your fault." His voice was husky with grief. "But I need to know. Have you seen this picture somewhere? Did someone show it to you? Is there anything you can tell me about it?" Emily shook her head, her memory blank. No, not that I can recall. Sometimes I just draw random sketches that pop into my mind. I swear I don't know where this one came from. The tension at the table was palpable. Emily could practically feel Christopher's desperation, and something in her own heart clenched. She sympathized with his pain, but her confusion only deepened. Why would she draw a picture connected to someone she had never met? And why did it feel strangely familiar? At last, Christopher nodded his posture, slumping in resignation. "All right," he said softly. "I'm sorry to make a scene." He reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card. "I know this is strange, but if you remember anything about this sketch, anything at all, please call me. My name is Christopher Hamilton." Emily accepted the card, hands trembling. "I will," she promised, her voice scarcely above a whisper. In that moment, she sensed her life was about to change, though she couldn't possibly predict the magnitude of events about to unfold. Later that night, Christopher drove back to his stately mansion in the exclusive Beacon Hill area of Boston. The city lights blurred past him, mirrored in the glossy sheen of his sleek black sedan. Normally, the hum of the car's engine brought him a sense of calm, but not tonight. His heart pounded with a renewed sense of urgency. He replayed the evening's events in his mind over and over like a reel he couldn't stop. 5 years of searching for Lily, and he had never come across anyone who spontaneously drew her doodle. The memory of that sun and daisy was so intimately tied to Lily that Christopher found it impossible to believe this was mere coincidence. He tried to rationalize, perhaps Emily had seen the drawing in a missing child flyer long ago. But that flyer never included Lily's sketches. Maybe Lily's story had been in the media, but the coverage focused on photographs, not her doodles. No logical explanation presented itself. Once home, Christopher nearly sprinted to his study, ignoring the concerned greeting of his housekeeper, Mrs. Clark. The room was a testament to his ongoing investigation. Walls lined with Lily's photographs, maps with pins marking possible sightings, a metal filing cabinet stuffed with leads. At the center of his broad oak desk was a single framed piece of paper, Lily's original doodle drawn for him on the last Father's Day before she vanished. It was slightly faded edges worn from being handled so often. He withdrew the crumpled receipt from his pocket. Carefully, he smoothed it out and compared it to Lily's doodle. Every detail matched the rays of the sun, the curly lines for the stem of the daisy, even the playful tilt of the sun's hat. The likelihood of random chance was impossibly small. Christopher felt tears prickling at the corners of his eyes, a mixture of longing, hope, and frustration. Could Lily be alive? He whispered to the silent walls. And if so, how did Emily Reyes come by this drawing? He knew only one person who might help him untangle this mystery. Jonathan Kendrick, the private detective who had stuck with Lily's case when everyone else left it in the cold. Jonathan had meticulously tracked every lead, every rumor, no matter how improbable. The detective had a mind like a steel trap and a heart that wouldn't quit. If there was even the slightest chance this bizarre doodle connection meant something, Jonathan would find out. Christopher grabbed his phone and dialed Kendrick's personal line. It was almost midnight, but he knew the detective often worked late. Sure enough, Jonathan picked up on the second ring. Christopher came the gruff yet concerned voice. Something happened. Breathing heavily, Christopher explained the night's events in a rush, words tumbling out in a frantic swirl. Kendrick listened intently occasionally, making a sound of acknowledgement. After a pause, he said, "That's uncanny. It can't be a coincidence, not if you say it's an exact match." Christopher's grip on the phone tightened. "You think so? I'm not crazy to believe this could be a clue?" "No, you're not crazy," Kendrick replied, "but let's not jump to wild conclusions either. Let me check into this waitress Emily Reyes. See if there's any connection to Lily we haven't considered." Relief washed over Christopher. "Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate it." They ended the call with a planned meet at Christopher's house the next morning to strategize. As Christopher sank into the plush chair behind his desk, he felt the faint stirring of hope. It was dangerous to hope because disappointment was all the more crushing if this proved to be a dead end, but Lily deserved every ounce of faith he could muster. Meanwhile, across town, Emily Reyes was in her tiny one-room apartment. She sat at a rickety desk, staring at the business card Christopher had given her. The name Christopher Hamilton in embossed script stared back, along with a phone number and an email address. The slip of paper felt like a tether to something momentous, something bigger than she could understand. She retrieved her worn leather journal from a dresser drawer and flipped through pages filled with sketches, clippings, and scrawled notes. She often doodled absent-mindedly birds, flowers, random shapes, but that particular sun with a daisy image was nowhere to be found. She had no clue why she drew it for Christopher. Usually she recognized her own doodles, but this one felt different. She pressed a palm to her forehead. She'd come to Boston looking for her birth parents, or at least some clue about who she really was. Everything she knew about her childhood was contained in a single red folder discovered by accident in the attic of the family who had raised her. She hadn't told a soul about her real quest, not even her new colleagues at Delphina's. She couldn't bear the pity or the complicated questions that might ensue. Now, she wondered if this chance meeting with Christopher Hamilton was fate or a cruel twist of irony. She resolved to check the old newspapers again. Perhaps Lily Hamilton's story would be there, and she might glean some insight. Sleep didn't come easily that night for either Christopher Hamilton or Emily Reyes. Both sensed the invisible strings of destiny, drawing them into a deeper, darker mystery, one that could either bring them answers or shatter their fragile hopes. Jonathan Kendrick arrived at Christopher's mansion early the next day, exuding a calm confidence that belied a keen sense of urgency. With salt and pepper hair and an unassuming demeanor, Kendrick was the polar opposite of the flashy, fictional detectives that dominated television. His real strength was patience and an uncanny ability to read people. Christopher led Kendrick to the study, where the detective took a seat at the large wooden desk. "This is the receipt," Christopher said, sliding the slip of paper across. "The drawing's identical, Jonathan. I can't stress that enough." Kendrick retrieved a small magnifying glass from his inner coat pocket, studying the doodle meticulously. He nodded. "The style is consistent with a child's drawing, but if Emily drew this as an adult, she's either mimicking a child's style or she's recalling something from her own early memories. Either way, it's enough to warrant a deeper look." They spent the next half hour discussing Emily's details, her name approximate age, how she'd ended up at Delphina's. Christopher knew almost nothing beyond her first name and where she worked. "We'll have to run a background check," Kendrick concluded. "I'll also speak with her directly, but I'll approach it carefully. We don't want to spook her." Christopher felt a surge of gratitude and apprehension. He remembered the fear in Emily's eyes the night before. She seemed genuine, even concerned, when she realized the significance of her drawing. "Go easy on her," he said softly. "I have a feeling she doesn't know how she drew that picture." Kendrick nodded, slipping the receipt into a protective sleeve for safekeeping. "Understood." Shortly afterward, Christopher escorted Kendrick to the foyer. As they parted, Kendrick reassured, "I'll be in touch as soon as I have anything, Chris. Hang in there." Back in his study, Christopher was overcome by a wave of memories. He opened a desk drawer and took out a small jewelry box. Inside was Lily's favorite hair ribbon, a pink satin strip with little white daisies embroidered along the edges. Lifting it gingerly, he pressed it against his palm, recalling how Lily loved to tie it around her pigtails every morning. The sensation of the ribbon's fabric both soothed and pained him, a reminder of the father he used to be. Meanwhile, across the city, Emily stood in front of the Boston Public Library's microfilm section. She had scoured the old newspapers for any story about missing children from 5 years ago. She found a short article from the Boston Globe titled, "Millionaire's Daughter Vanishes Without a Trace." The article recapped Lily Hamilton's disappearance. 8-year-old Lily Hamilton was last seen leaving for ballet class in the early afternoon. A tearful Christopher Hamilton was photographed holding up a missing person flyer, pleading for the public's help. Emily's eyes lingered on the black and white picture of Christopher. His features were younger, softer, and etched with panic. The image of Lily in the article showed a bright-eyed little girl with a beaming smile. Emily studied Lily's face, trying to see if it triggered any recognition. Nothing concrete emerged, just a faint sense of sadness. She turned the microfilm wheel, scanning for more articles. Over the next few weeks following Lily's disappearance, the media coverage ramped up. People speculated whether a kidnapping ring was involved or if it was a custody dispute with Lily's mother. Christopher offered a sizable reward for Lily's safe return, but the trail went cold and eventually the news moved on. Emily pressed a hand to her heart, her fingertips trembling on the old newspaper screen. The weight of Christopher's tragedy pressed upon her, and she felt an unexplainable sense of responsibility. "Why did I draw that picture?" she murmured. "I need answers." She spent another hour searching for any mention of Lily's doodles. Nothing came up. Gathering her bag, she left the library with more questions than answers. She considered calling Christopher, but the mere thought made her anxious. How would she explain that she had no idea where the sketch came from? As Emily walked through the bustling streets, she noticed a man wearing a dark coat and hat, seemingly watching her from across the road. She quickened her pace, glancing over her shoulder. The man fell into step behind her, keeping a careful distance. Anxiety spiked in her chest. This was a big city. Maybe it was just coincidence. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was following her. Emily ducked into a nearby cafe, pressing her back against the wall while peering through the window. The man passed by outside, scanning the interior briefly before continuing down the sidewalk. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She stayed there for several minutes, sipping a coffee she didn't really want, until she was sure he was gone. Little did she know, Jonathan Kendrick had mobilized his resources swiftly, and the man tailing her was one of his associates. But he wasn't the only one interested in Emily Reyes. Hidden forces connected to a larger tapestry of secrets were awakening. Christopher had unknowingly kicked up dust that had lain settled for too long. When Emily finally summoned the courage to leave the cafe, she hurried back to her apartment, locking the door behind her. She felt ridiculous for being so spooked, but her instincts told her something bigger was at play. She retrieved the red folder from her dresser. Inside was a single birth certificate fragment, with her name, Emily Reyes, listed as a foundling at a small clinic in Maine. There was no father's name, no mother's name, only a date that placed her birth roughly 6 months earlier than she'd been told by her adoptive parents. Her entire life was built on shaky foundations. The doodle was just one more mystery piled onto a growing heap. Jonathan Kendrick wasn't the type to waste time. By the afternoon following his meeting with Christopher, he had already pulled Emily Reyes's personnel file from Delfina's. He discovered that she listed her birth date as June 16th, making her 23. No emergency contact, no references aside from a single phone number in Maine that went straight to voicemail. She'd been hired for her polite demeanor and strong work ethic. Everything else about her was a blank slate. Kendrick also placed discreet surveillance on Emily, intending to learn about her habits and daily routine. He instructed his associate, a former Navy intelligence officer named Daniel Harlow, to keep his distance and not to engage unless necessary. When Emily ducked into the cafe in a panic, Daniel backed off, not wanting to blow his cover. He reported the incident to Kendrick. "She definitely spooked easy. Seems like she's hiding something." Back at his modest office overlooking the Charles River, Kendrick pored over the background check results. Emily Reyes had no criminal record, no bank account under her name until a month ago, and minimal digital footprint. It was as if she appeared out of nowhere, anomalous in a world where everyone leaves some trail of data. Intrigued, Kendrick decided to call Christopher with an update. "She's clean, at least on the surface," he said when Christopher answered. "No big surprises, except that she's practically a ghost, barely any records at all." Christopher exhaled heavily into the phone. "So, either she's living off the grid or there's more to her story. That's my guess. Let me keep digging. I'll see if I can find out anything from her old address in Maine. Also, I think it's time to talk to her in person. I'll pose as a friendly acquaintance, maybe a reporter doing a human interest piece on Delfina's staff. Something low-key." "That's fine," Christopher replied, "but be careful." She seemed genuinely confused when I confronted her. Later that afternoon, Kendrick made his way to Delfina's. He was careful to arrive during a slow period around 3 o'clock when lunch rush had ended and dinner rush was yet to begin. He requested a table in Emily's section. She approached with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, welcome to Delfina's. Can I get you something to drink?" Kendrick put on his most approachable grin. "Just coffee, please. Black." He observed Emily with a practiced eye, noticing the tension in her posture. She seemed wary, as if half expecting him to mention something about Christopher Hamilton or that peculiar doodle. When Emily returned with the coffee, he decided to break the ice. "I'm doing a small feature on local restaurants," he lied. "I'd love to chat about your experience here if you have a moment." Her eyebrows flicked up. "A feature?" In a newspaper online publication, Kendrick clarified, handing her a business card. It bore a made-up media label, a standard tactic for his undercover inquiries. "You're Emily Reyes, right?" She paused, scanning the card. "Yes." "How did you—" Kendrick shrugged casually. "I asked the hostess which server might have an interesting story. She recommended you said you were new to the city and a real go-getter." Emily's shoulders relaxed a fraction, though suspicion still shone in her eyes. "I'm not sure I'm that interesting," she replied softly. He sipped his coffee. "You never know. Sometimes the best stories come from people who don't think they have one." "How do you like Boston so far?" Emily hesitated. "It's different from Maine. Big, busy, overwhelming sometimes, but it's growing on me." Kendrick nodded. "I see. And what brought you here? School career opportunities? Family?" She hesitated again, knuckles tightening around her serving tray. "I came here looking for someone." Kendrick raised an eyebrow. "Really? A friend?" "Relative." Emily pressed her lips together as if she'd already said too much. "Just a personal matter," she said quietly. "I don't really want to get into it." Deciding not to push too hard, too soon, Kendrick nodded and changed the subject to the restaurant menu, praising the chef's flair. He jotted down notes in a small notebook, maintaining the facade of a journalist. Throughout the conversation, Emily's eyes kept darting around as if she feared being overheard or recognized. She remained polite, yet guarded. After a few minutes, Kendrick wrapped up the interview, leaving a generous tip. Before he departed, he handed her his card again, saying, "If you ever want to share more about your story, don't hesitate to call or text." Emily tucked the card into her apron with a forced smile. "Thank you," she managed, but her voice trembled slightly. As Kendrick left, he realized Emily was far more fragile and anxious than he'd anticipated. Whatever secrets she held, they weighed on her. He made a mental note to approach the situation with empathy. Pressing too hard might send her running, and if she was connected to Lily in some obscure way, they could lose their only lead. Back in the kitchen, Emily felt sweat beading on her temples. She recognized that the man who claimed to be a reporter was likely not who he said he was. She'd developed an instinct for deception growing up. When you had secrets to hide, you learned to spot liars. He seemed polite enough, but something about his manner, his calm, measured tone, hinted at a more methodical mindset. She wondered if Christopher Hamilton had sent him. Although Christopher's business card remained tucked safely in her jacket pocket, she still hadn't called. She was torn between wanting answers about why she drew that strange doodle and an instinctive fear of diving into someone else's tragedy. Deep down, a whisper in her heart suggested that Lily Hamilton's disappearance might be intertwined with her own murky past. But that possibility both frightened and intrigued her. By evening, when her shift ended, Emily promised herself that she would at least try to find out more about Lily. Something about that doodle gnawed at her mind, and avoiding the truth wouldn't make it go away. She left Delfina's determined to unearth whatever lay hidden at the intersection of her life and Lily's. Christopher Hamilton rarely felt powerless, but the days following his encounter with Emily Reyes tested every ounce of his patience. With Kendrick busy running discreet investigations, Christopher dedicated his time to scouring his own archives of Lily's case. every newspaper clipping, every interview transcript, every note from the countless search efforts. He was desperate to unearth any detail that might suggest Lily had been secretly relocated or placed in someone else's care. He found nothing new. The old leads remained lifeless. A few calls to acquaintances in law enforcement confirmed that Lily's case was still open, but had long gone cold. Despite his frustration, Christopher clung to the slender possibility that Emily's drawing meant Lily was alive, and maybe even living in Boston. On the third night, he found himself at his old philanthropic office. After Lily's disappearance, Christopher had established the Hamilton Foundation for Missing Children. The foundation was later absorbed into a larger nonprofit after Christopher became less involved in day-to-day operations. Yet he still kept a small office space with historical records and leftover case files. Dim fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he rummaged through battered filing cabinets. He paused when he came across a folder labeled Leads, Year, Jonathan K. Inside was a log of phone calls and visits made by Kendrick, meticulously documenting each rumor or tip about Lily. One entry, dated roughly a year after Lily's disappearance, caught Christopher's eye, March 18th. Tip from an anonymous source claiming Lily was spotted with an older woman near Augusta, Maine. Source described a young girl with daisies in her hair. Follow-up lead went nowhere. Local authorities couldn't verify. Christopher reread that line, an older woman near Augusta, Maine, the state Emily Reyes came from. Could it be connected? The lead had been dismissed due to lack of evidence, but Christopher couldn't shake the coincidence. He immediately dialed Kendrick. Kendrick's groggy voice answered he'd been asleep. Christopher apologized but relayed the information, his excitement palpable. Emily came from Maine. Lily was supposedly seen there with a woman. I need you to follow up on that lead again. Kendrick sighed into the phone. Chris, that was 4 years ago. But okay, I'll do it. I'll drive up to Augusta first thing tomorrow and ask around. Don't get your hopes up too high. Christopher thanked him, feeling a flicker of renewed energy. Even if it was a long shot, it was better than the crushing inertia of the past few years. Meanwhile, Emily Reyes was alone in her small apartment, the city lights twinkling through her window. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, noticing the tension in her jawline. Ever since that encounter with Christopher and the so-called reporter, her mind had been swirling with possibilities. Her instincts screamed that her arrival in Boston and Lily Hamilton's story were no random accident. She returned to the tattered red folder that contained the meager scraps of her past. Among them was a single Polaroid photograph of her as a toddler, standing outside a weather-beaten house in Maine. Next to her was an older woman with kind eyes, her adoptive grandmother if the notes on the back were to be believed. Emily traced the woman's face, remembering how she used to hum lullabies at night. That woman had passed away when Emily was still young. After that, the family that officially adopted her offered few answers, only telling her she was left in a basket at the small clinic. What if Lily was also left somewhere, she pondered? What if the older woman in Maine was the same one in my photo? Feeling the momentum of her questions push her forward, Emily retrieved her phone and entered Christopher Hamilton's number. Her finger hovered over the call button. Anxiety gripped her chest, but curiosity and a sense of responsibility won out. She pressed dial. It rang 3 times before a familiar voice picked up. "Hello, Mr. Hamilton," Emily began quietly. It's Emily, the waitress from Delfina's. I want to talk." There was a moment of stunned silence. Then Christopher spoke, voice tinged with urgent hope. "Emily, thank you for calling. I've been hoping to hear from you." "I don't have many answers," she continued, her voice trembling. "But I have questions about this drawing, about your daughter Lily. I'm trying to piece together my own past, and I think there might be a connection." Christopher could barely contain his eagerness. "Yes, of course, let's meet. Anytime, anywhere you feel comfortable. I just want to know more." Emily looked around her cramped apartment. This didn't feel like the right place. There's a cafe near the library, the Green Leaf. Could we meet there tomorrow morning, say 10, Christopher agreed instantly, ignoring a surge of anxiety about stepping into a public place. I'll be there. After hanging up, Emily leaned back against her couch cushions, heart thudding. She'd just opened a door into unknown territory, and there was no turning back. She spent the rest of the night staring at old pictures and trying to quell the swirl of uneasy anticipation. At the same time, Christopher felt a renewed sense of hope. In a matter of hours, he would speak to the one person who might shed light on Lily's fate. Despite the storm of emotions raging within him, he allowed himself the smallest smile. After 5 long years of heartbreak and dead ends, there was finally a sign, albeit faint, that Lily might still be out there. As the city slumbered, neither of them realized that events beyond their control were aligning. Kendrick was on the verge of a new discovery in Maine, and hidden adversaries were growing restless. The puzzle's edges were beginning to come together, but the pieces in the center remained a tangled mystery of half-truths and forgotten memories. Memories that would soon force them all to confront painful realities and unimaginable revelations. The next morning, the sky was a pale wash of gray as Emily entered the Green Leaf Cafe. The place was cozy, filled with the aroma of freshly ground coffee and the quiet hum of early risers starting their day. Emily chose a corner table, her back to the wall, so she could see the entrance. She fiddled nervously with her phone, checking the time every few seconds. At precisely 10 o'clock, Christopher Hamilton appeared. Despite his wealth and fame, he dressed humbly in a dark polo shirt and slacks. The only hint of his status was the sleek watch on his wrist. He spotted Emily and approached with a careful sul, as if afraid to startle her. "Emily," he greeted softly. She nodded, motioning for him to sit. "Mr. Hamilton." He waved off the formality. "Please call me Christopher." They sat in awkward silence for a moment. A waitress approached, and Christopher ordered a cappuccino while Emily stuck with tea. After the waitress left, Christopher cleared his throat. "I appreciate you reaching out. I know this must be difficult for you." Emily's eyes flickered, revealing vulnerability. "I'm not entirely sure why I'm here. I just can't stop thinking about this strange connection. I keep remembering your face when you saw that doodle. It was like your whole world shifted." Christopher nodded. That picture meant everything to Lily. It's like it was her personal signature. No one else drew it quite the way she did. Seeing you recreate it so precisely, I can't ignore that. Emily leaned forward, lowering her voice. "The thing is, I've been searching for my birth parents. I was adopted, or maybe even abandoned as a baby, in Maine. My adoptive family gave me a few documents, but I don't know the full story. I came to Boston chasing a rumor that someone in my birth family might be here. Then I end up drawing a picture that belonged to your missing daughter." Christopher listened intently, his expression a mix of empathy and intrigue. "You think you might be related to Lily?" Emily swallowed. "I'm not sure. The timeline doesn't make sense. She went missing 5 years ago, but I'm 23. It's impossible that I'm Lily. Yet, there could be something else, like maybe the same people who took Lily had some connection to me, or maybe Lily was in Maine for a time and that image stuck with me somehow." The waitress arrived with their drinks and they paused, each lost in thought. After she left, Christopher spoke quietly. "I have a friend investigating a potential lead in Maine. Something from a few years back. Supposedly Lily was spotted there with an older woman. Could that be your adoptive grandmother or someone from your hometown? It might be a stretch, but it's worth exploring." Emily sipped her tea, hands trembling slightly. "I barely remember my adoptive grandmother. She died when I was young, but I have a photograph." She pulled out a faded Polaroid from her purse and handed it to Christopher. The image showed a rustic house with peeling paint, a small toddler Emily, and an elderly woman in a floral dress. Christopher studied it, brow furrowed. "I don't recognize the woman, but that doesn't mean anything definitive. Could you show this to your detective friend Jonathan Kendrick?" Christopher supplied, handing back the Polaroid. "Yes, I'd like him to see it." Emily's gaze dropped to the table. He came into Delphina's, pretending to be a reporter. I figured it was him or someone else you hired. I was unsettled. Christopher looked chagrined. I'm sorry about that. I asked him to approach you carefully. But I never meant to invade your privacy. She nodded, accepting the apology but still uneasy. I just want to be sure we're on the same side, she said. If I can help find Lily, or at least help you figure out why I drew that picture, I will. Christopher's eyes shimmered with gratitude. Thank you. This means more to me than you can imagine. They spoke for over an hour, discussing everything Emily knew about her past, which wasn't much, and everything Christopher could share about Lily. The conversation was marked by tears on both sides, Christopher's heartbreak over losing Lily, and Emily's frustration over her shadowy origins. Despite their emotional turmoil, a sense of camaraderie began to form. Eventually, Emily stood, needing to head to her afternoon shift at Delphina's. As they parted, Christopher gently touched her arm. Listen, if you ever feel unsafe or overwhelmed, call me. Anytime. I know we don't really know each other, but I want to help. Emily mustered a small smile. I appreciate that. And Christopher, I'm truly sorry for what you've been through. He watched her leave, torn between hope and caution. This new partnership felt precarious, balancing on the knife edge of possibility. In the back of his mind, he worried about more sinister forces that might be at play. He vowed not to let Emily become another victim. As he headed out the door, Christopher noticed a figure sitting near the window with a half-finished cup of coffee, Daniel Harlow, Kendrick's associate. He offered Christopher a subtle nod. Clearly, Kendrick had placed watchers everywhere. A flutter of guilt passed through Christopher's conscience, but he reminded himself it was necessary. If Emily was an unwitting key to Lily's whereabouts, they had to protect her at all costs. Unknown to both Christopher and Emily, a woman in dark sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat lingered on the sidewalk outside, watching them exit the cafe. A ghost from a long-buried past, she turned and slipped away before anyone could notice her, another piece on the chessboard quietly moving into place. The next day, Jonathan Kendrick drove 4 hours north to Augusta, Maine. The town had a sleepy charm far removed from Boston's frenetic energy. He parked his car near the local police station and walked inside, flashing his credentials at the desk sergeant. Though he no longer wore a badge, his connections often opened doors in small precincts, looking for any records of a missing girl from Boston who might have been spotted in Augusta about 4 years ago, he said. Her name was Lily Hamilton. The desk sergeant, a burly man with a weather-beaten face, looked up the relevant files. We had a note about that in an old tip log. Hang on. He disappeared into a back room, returning with a tattered manila folder. Here it is. Anonymous call said they spotted a girl resembling Lily at the Brookside Diner on Route 201. The tipster claimed the girl was accompanied by an older woman with gray hair. No follow-up address or identification. The tip was never substantiated. Kendrick thanked him and scanned the file. The date matched Christopher's note, March 18th, 4 years ago. There was no further detail, just a single paragraph summarizing the call. Guess I'll check the diner, Kendrick said, handing back the folder. Brookside Diner was a small, unassuming establishment off the main road, boasting vinyl booths and old-fashioned milkshake machines. The neon sign out front flickered with an intermittent buzz. Kendrick stepped inside, heartened to see a handful of locals sipping coffee and reading newspapers. He approached the gray-haired waitress behind the counter, whose name tag read Betty. Hi there, Kendrick greeted, offering a kind smile. I'm looking into an old matter, something that might have happened about 4 years ago. A young girl, possibly around 8 or 9, was seen here with an older woman. Does that ring a bell? Betty's brow furrowed. We get all kinds through here. Can't say I remember. Kendrick pulled out a photograph of Lily. It was the same one from the missing person poster. Does she look familiar at all? Betty tilted her head, scrutinizing the photo. It's been a while, but, there was a quiet girl who came in with an older lady around that time. The lady was real polite, had a gentle voice. They didn't talk much. The girl looked sad, if I recall correctly. Kendrick's pulse quickened. Do you remember anything else, like how they arrived, what they talked about? Betty thought for a moment. They arrived on foot, I believe. The older woman asked if there was a cheap motel nearby. Seemed like they were passing through. She paid in cash and gave a nice tip, couple of folded bills. Did she give a name or mention where they were headed? Betty shook her head. No, sorry. After they ate, I saw them head out toward a motel about 2 blocks down. Kendrick asked for directions, then thanked Betty for her help. Her recollection wasn't definitive proof, but it hinted that Lily, or a girl who looked like her, had indeed passed through Augusta. Next, he strolled over to the small roadside motel Betty mentioned. The sign out front read, Maple Shade Motel Vacancy. The clerk behind the desk was a balding man in his 60s, wearing thick bifocals. He was cautious at first, but opened up once Kendrick showed him Lily's photo. 4 years ago, we keep records for 7 years, so let me check. The clerk disappeared into a back office, returning with a thick binder. He flipped through pages of handwritten registrations until he paused at a certain entry. March 18th. A woman named Harriet Jones. Paid cash for 1 night, left the next morning. No address on file, just a phone number that turned out to be disconnected. She had a little girl with her. Kendrick felt a jolt of excitement. Does the description of the little girl match this photo? The clerk shrugged. Could be. I remember the child was quiet, hardly looked at me. Harriet said they were visiting family. Next morning, they were gone early. Is there anything else you recall? Did Harriet mention where they were heading next? Not that I remember. Wait, hold on. He tapped a note in the margin. We do note license plate numbers if we can see them. Looks like Harriet Jones was driving a battered green sedan with main plates. I wrote down partial digits M12 something. It wasn't much, but it was something. Thank you, Kendrick said, scribbling it down. He left the motel with the sense that he was edging closer to the truth. Back in his car, he called Christopher. Chris, I have a lead. An older woman calling herself Harriet Jones checked into a motel with a child. It happened on the exact date of that tip. Could be Lily. No proof yet, but the pieces fit. Christopher's breath caught. That means Lily was alive at least a year after her disappearance. She might still be out there. Kendrick nodded, though Christopher couldn't see him. Agreed. I'll see if I can trace the plate number or if Harriet Jones is an alias. But it'll take time. Ending the call, Kendrick scrolled through his phone contacts. He had a friend in the main DMV who might be able to run partial plates. He also considered Emily Reyes's possible connection. If Harriet Jones was real, could she be the older woman who once took in Emily? He hoped to connect the dots soon, but he had the distinct feeling that someone else was also on the hunt. He climbed back into his car, adrenaline pumping. For the first time in years, there was concrete evidence Lily might have been relocated or hidden. If Harriet Jones was an alias, then the question became, who was she really, and why take Lily to Maine? The swirling questions left him uneasy. He recalled the countless child trafficking stories he'd encountered in his career. The thought that Lily might have been swept into such a nightmare chilled him to the core. But as he started the engine, he resolved to press on. If Lily was still alive, they would find her. Far from the serenity of Maine's pine forests, back in Boston, Emily had a foreboding sense that events were accelerating. She noticed a black car passing by her apartment several times that day. Whether it was paranoia or reality, she couldn't be sure. One thing was certain, the answers they all sought were inching ever closer, and with them came the looming risk that the truth might tear their fragile worlds apart. Emily stood in Delphina's kitchen, the clang of pots and pans ringing in her ears. It was just past closing time, and she was finishing her last task, wiping down the counters. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, expecting a spam text, but instead saw a new message from an unknown number. Unknown, we need to talk. Meet me behind Delphina's at 10 p.m. Alone. Important info about Lily. Her heart lurched. The only people who had her number were her co-workers, her adoptive family, and Christopher. This number was none of those. Could it be Lily's abductor? Or someone else involved? She felt a chill creep across her arms. She glanced at the clock. 9:58. Taking a deep breath, she slipped out the back door into the narrow alley. The air smelled faintly of garbage and wet concrete. A single street lamp cast long shadows on the walls. She saw no one. Anxiety gnawed at her. Then from the darkness emerged a woman in a hooded coat. She lifted her head, revealing sharp features and piercing eyes. "You're Emily Reyes," the stranger asked, voice low. Emily nodded, heart pounding. "Who are you?" The woman stepped closer, keeping her hands visible to avoid scaring Emily. "My name is Monica Fletcher. I have information about Lily Hamilton." Emily's eyes widened. "How do you know about me? And why text me like this?" Monica sighed, looking around nervously. "I don't want Christopher Hamilton or Jonathan Kendrick to know about this meeting. Not yet. Too many eyes in their circle. I'm trying to protect Lily." A swirl of questions filled Emily's mind. "You've seen Lily. She's alive?" Monica hesitated, then nodded. "She was hidden for years, moved from place to place. The older woman in Maine was a cover. Lily was being protected from her mother." Emily's brow furrowed in confusion. "Her mother? You mean Marjorie Hamilton?" Monica nodded. "It's complicated. Marjorie was involved with dangerous people. Lily's abduction was orchestrated to keep her away from them. Harriet Jones, an alias, was part of an underground network that helps children escape precarious family situations. Lily was not kidnapped for ransom, but for her own safety." Emily's mouth went dry. Could this be real? Why hasn't she been returned to Christopher? He's been searching everywhere. Monica's expression hardened, because no one knew who to trust. Marjorie's associates are powerful. They can bribe the authorities, manipulate investigations. If Lily resurfaced publicly, she could be in danger. The network decided to keep her hidden until it was safe. Emily felt dizzy. Then why come to me? Monica studied her eyes, shimmering with a mysterious intensity. "Because you drew Lily's doodle. That means you might have a repressed memory or a connection to Harriet's network." "Harriet is no longer alive. She died from an illness 2 years ago, and Lily is under someone else's care. I believe you could help find her and ensure her safety." Emily reeled, stepping back. "But I don't remember anything like that. I was raised in Maine, but I didn't know Harriet. I'm just trying to find my own family." Monica paused, evidently weighing how much more to reveal. "Emily, there's a possibility you were also once under Harriet's care. You might share a connection with Lily that goes beyond a simple doodle." Tears pricked Emily's eyes. "This is insane. Why are you telling me all this now?" Monica's voice softened. "Because we're running out of time. Christopher's investigations are heating up, which means Marjorie's people are paying attention. If we don't coordinate carefully, Lily could be forced even deeper underground or worse." Emily felt torn between loyalty to Christopher and the new perspective Monica offered. Could Marjorie Hamilton truly be involved in something so sinister? She recalled reading old rumors that Marjorie had questionable business dealings, but nothing was confirmed. Monica continued urgently, "I need you to promise me you won't tell Christopher or Kendrick about this meeting. Not yet. I'll contact you again soon with details on how to proceed. Lily needs you to stay quiet and stay safe." Before Emily could respond, footsteps echoed at the alley entrance. Monica tensed, stepping back into the shadows. Emily turned to see who had arrived. It was Daniel Harlow, Christopher's or Kendrick's associate, presumably tailing her again. "Daniel called. You okay?" When Emily turned back, Monica was gone, disappearing into the night like a wraith, heart racing. Emily forced a nod toward Daniel. "Yeah, just taking out the trash." Daniel eyed her suspiciously but said nothing. He turned and retreated. Emily lingered, pressing a hand to her chest. Her world was tilting beneath her feet. If Monica was telling the truth, Lily was alive but in hiding and possibly entangled in a conspiracy involving her own mother. Emily had no idea whom to trust or how to reconcile Monica's warning with Christopher's desperation. She only knew she was caught in the middle of a dangerous game. She returned to her apartment that night, mind buzzing. She wanted to warn Christopher to share these revelations, but she feared betraying the fragile trust Monica had shown. She also feared what might happen if Marjorie's associates learned Emily knew too much. For now, she decided to keep quiet. She only hoped she wasn't making a colossal mistake that could endanger Lily further, or herself. Little did she realize from across the street a figure watched her window as the lights turned off. Monica Fletcher was indeed a piece in this puzzle, but her true intentions remained opaque. The only certainty was that the stakes had just skyrocketed. With each new revelation, the bonds of secrecy frayed a little more, inching everyone closer to a truth that could either save Lily or destroy them all. Jonathan Kendrick returned to Boston late that night, armed with new leads from Maine. The partial license plate, the motel clerk's testimony, and the recollection of a local waitress all pointed to a carefully orchestrated relocation of Lily Hamilton. He briefed Christopher early the next morning, each piece of information fueling Christopher's hope and anxiety. "We need to pin down who Harriet Jones really was," Kendrick said. "Then we can figure out her network. If Lily was smuggled away for her safety, someone had to bankroll that operation. Possibly Marjorie Hamilton or someone connected to her." Christopher exhaled slowly, a grim realization hitting him. Marjorie had always been resentful that the court awarded him custody. It was plausible she might have orchestrated Lily's disappearance to keep her away from him. But would she do so to protect Lily, or was it more sinister? "I'll contact my legal team," Christopher said. "We'll see if we can trace any bank transactions or flight records under Marjorie's name from around that time." Kendrick nodded, careful not to tip her off. "If Marjorie is behind this, we don't want her knowing we're close." Meanwhile, Emily struggled with the weight of her secret meeting with Monica Fletcher. As she dressed for her afternoon shift, she debated whether to tell Christopher about Monica's claims, but fear of the unknown and the possibility that betraying Monica's trust might doom Lily kept her silent. That evening, Christopher appeared at Delphina's requesting to sit in Emily's section again. He offered a warm greeting, though concern knitted his brow. Emily faked a smile and took his order, her emotions churning beneath the surface. She noticed Daniel Harlow perched at the bar sipping a soda and pretending to be a casual customer. She felt trapped, every move scrutinized by Christopher's circle. After serving Christopher his meal, Emily gathered her courage and pulled up a chair across from him, mindful of not attracting undue attention. "Christopher," she whispered, "I found out some things about Lily." His eyes widened. He leaned forward, hope flooding his expression. "What do you mean, you heard from someone?" She hesitated, scanning the dining area for Daniel or any other watchers. "I can't say much, but, someone told me Lily might be in hiding to protect her from Marjorie's associates. They said Lily's abduction wasn't for money but for safety." Christopher's lips parted in shock. He looked momentarily stunned, then a flicker of understanding passed across his features. "Emily, who told you this?" She bit her lip. "I can't reveal that yet. They said it's not safe, but they claim Lily was part of some network. Harriet Jones was an alias? Do you know anything about that name?" Christopher's gaze dropped, his hands trembling. Jonathan discovered Harriet Jones was the name used by an older woman traveling with Lily in Maine. "It's our biggest lead." Emily's heart thundered in her chest. Monica's information was matching Kendrick's. That meant her tip was legitimate. She wanted to spill everything, but Monica's warning loomed. "Just be careful who you trust, Christopher," she finally said. "I'm sorry if this is vague, but there's a lot I don't understand yet." Christopher reached across the table, gripping her hand gently. "Emily, I value your honesty. I don't want you putting yourself in danger. But if you have a reliable source who knows Lily's whereabouts, please help me get my daughter back." Tears burned Emily's eyes. "I'm trying, I promise." Their hushed conversation was cut short when a commotion erupted near the entrance. A tall woman in a sleek black dress, accompanied by two men in suits, stormed inside. Emily recognized her from old media photos, Marjorie Hamilton. She wore an air of entitlement and anger, scanning the room until her gaze locked on Christopher. "Christopher Hamilton," she snapped, striding toward their table. "Your meddling knows no bounds, does it?" Patrons stared at the sudden drama unfolding. Christopher stood up, his posture rigid. Marjorie, what are you doing here? I heard you've been snooping around again, Marjorie hissed, ignoring Emily, digging into old leads about Lily, contacting anyone who might know something, stirring up the media. Why can't you just accept that Lily is gone? Christopher's jaw clenched. I will never accept that. You of all people should understand. Marjorie scoffed. You think you can force the world to bend to your will with your money? You're endangering my family with these accusations. A hush fell over the restaurant as staff and customers alike watched transfixed. Emily, heart-pounding, carefully backed away, unsure whether to intervene. She felt a cold wave of realization. If Marjorie was behind Lily's disappearance, whether to protect or harm her, this confrontation could ignite serious consequences. Christopher's voice rose raw with pent-up fury. What have you done with Lily, Marjorie? If you know anything, you better tell me now. I won't stop until I find her. Marjorie's face contorted in anger and perhaps a flicker of guilt. She stepped closer, her men in suits flanking her. You're insane. You lost Lily once and you're about to lose everything else. Stay out of my affairs, Christopher, or you'll regret it. With that, she spun around and marched out, her lackeys following close behind. The entire restaurant remained still for a moment, stunned by the display. Christopher slowly sank back into his seat, breath ragged. Emily approached cautiously, placing a trembling hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, she whispered, unsure what else to say. Christopher glanced up, tears pooling in his eyes. She knows something, Emily. She has to. I won't rest until I get Lily home. Emily swallowed hard, mind whirling with Monica's warnings and Marjorie's threats. The tension in the air crackled with impending danger. One thing was clear, the fragile alliance's hidden agendas and swirling emotions were about to collide in a storm that would determine Lily's fate and possibly their own. Thank you for joining us on this harrowing journey of secrets, hidden pasts, and unbreakable hope. Christopher Hamilton's desperate search for his missing daughter has led us through the winding paths of Maine, the clandestine networks of old secrets, and the unsuspecting life of waitress Emily Reyes, whose own story may be entwined with Lily's fate. As loyalties are tested and new dangers arise, the final chapters promise to reveal whether the truth can be uncovered before it's too late. If this story has captured your heart and kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to share, and subscribe to our channel. Help us spread the word and stay tuned as the mystery deepens. Each click from you supports more stories like this and keeps our community of curious minds growing. Thank you for watching, and remember to keep hope alive